my calculations are correct, when this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
They're here.
Do you really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy?
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
It's showtime.
Right, welcome everybody to another episode of the VHS Strikes Back. I'm one of your hosts, Chris, and my co-host and very good friend is Dave.
Hey there, Chris, and hello to our listeners out there. Welcome to the VHS Strikes Back, the show where we dust off the old video player and go on a nostalgic journey to look at the good and the bad movies of yesteryear. Now, Chris, what are we going to review this week?
Well, Dave, it is your pick, and after my pick of the Gumball Rally, I thought, well, it's still saying Wrath of Khan or whatever it's saying in the calendar, which you
Star
so
Trek
elegantly...
3, the search for
yeah, whatever it is. That's it. I was like, just stop it now. Just stop it right now. However, we are in the Star Trek universe. You have picked a movie from 1996, but luckily we haven't got William Shatner, Dave, which is not a bad thing in this one. This one is Star Trek First Contact. So, Dave, having no reference point, what do you remember about this the first time you saw it?
Well, I think, to be honest, the story for this, and I apologise, because we did do Wrath of Khan, the second movie, with the Shatnerverse, if you like, and I might have talked about this then, but it's a long time ago and I can't remember. So I will say with Star Trek, you know, the first exposure to it is about 6 o'clock on a weeknight and just it being on all the time. It was a staple. Things like Dick Tracy always seemed to be on as well. Didn't watch that as much. And I just remember there was something just so different about it. Even in the 80s, this was made in the 60s, so it was like 20 years previous. So it looked a bit weird. You always see the one with, what was he fighting? The big lizard thing, Korg or something like that. Shatner in the worst choreographed fight scene you've ever seen. But there was something about it that I just watched it as a kid. Now, I'd never had the love for Star Trek that I have for, say, Star Wars. But it was different. It was more like mostly talking, quite honestly, and like these funny beings and these little 60s miniskirt situations going on there. And I just remember quite liking it as well, much more than you. But if I think of one flash scene, it's when the music gets to that crescendo at the end, you go, oh, you know, right at the end, yeah. And you've got that surprised green bloke at the end, and I never saw an episode with him in it. I'm like, where did they get this guy? But yeah, so I loved the sort of the original Star Trek series, and then coming into Next Generation, I remember I had a poster, Chris. I had a poster of the Next Generation. So before it came on the TV, I can't even remember how I got it, but it was just up on the wall and I was fascinated by it, particularly like Geordi. He had this visor. I was like, oh, that's so like futuristic and cool. But I was trying to draw a straight line from each character. I'm like, oh, that's like, you know, he's the captain, but he's Data, he seems to be like the Spock type logical character, but it wasn't that. It wasn't a complete straight line. And I remember watching the TV series, but again, you know, it was just different. It was very much more, it felt like a TV series, if that makes sense, like serialized storytelling. But then we get to 1996, which I think it's probably one of my favorite years, Chris. Just generally, if I think back, you think, and I'll get onto the music bit again later, but I think coming into university for me and getting away from home and everything, I had been listening much more to like stuff like rock and heavy metal and stuff like that. And it was only when I moved away I was more into indie. And so I think around this time, you know, I was much more into the indie stuff. And, you know, it was Euro 96, wasn't it? What a fucking summer that was. And so, yeah, I remember going to, you know, this would have been Preston, the Preston cinema, and didn't really have a lot of expectations for what this movie would be. The Star Trek movies have never really done it for me, like the Star Wars movies did. But I remember watching it and thinking, fucking hell. And at the time, like the effects were just not Star Trek like. They were too good. You always the Borg were always a bit scary, but they were always economical with the effects and everything. And I just remember watching it, and some of the bits were genuinely scary. And I came out of the cinema like, that is the best Star Trek film I've ever seen, hands down. And I just loved it. And then over the years, I've watched it a few times, but not that much. And I thought, I was laughing thinking back to our earlier conversations on the VHS where you proclaimed that you hated sci-fi, but we had to start off the podcast with Back to the Future 1 and 2. And then it unraveled, about how most of your favorite movies, apart from car chase type things, happen to be sci-fi. But we narrowed it down to more the sort of Star Trek, again, I feel like the talking, the mentioning of abstract things, I think that's more, where your hatred comes from. But I wanted to test the boundaries a little bit. So it is the era of the stitch up. So I thought I'd throw a Star Trek one in there. But I think if I was to try and get anyone into this universe, I think I'd probably start with this movie.
Well. So I completely avoided the TV shows. It was always on Sky One, wasn't it? Star Trek, was it Generation? What's
Next Generation.
Next Generation. I always remember not knowing at the time that we were getting, Professor X, Patrick Stewart later down the line. I just never thought, I'm never going to watch that. And I used to see, and obviously he's the director, and Jonathan Frakes, who plays Riker. He's the director of this and did some of the shows, which is quite interesting as well. But I just, every time I saw it, I'm like, oh, this is a rip-off of like William Shatner and that. And I hated them at the best of times, not knowing, Jean-Luc Picard and realizing it's a different character. And I know there's a bit of a crossover, but I didn't have a clue what this movie was at all. I didn't have a clue. I knew you were stitching me. I was like, oh, for God's sake, Dave. And I messaged you when I was watching it. As I was sunning myself watching it on my phone, Dave, and then as movie went into my living room to watch it. And I hated everything about Dave Horrocks at that point, because I was like, this is Star Trek. This is a fucking franchise I hate. And I think you're right. I think, like, joking aside, the stuff with the original Star Trek was always like, it sounds silly, but it was from the 60s, but it was never at the level of even like Batman 66 TV show. It wasn't the Batman run there of Adam West. There was always something about it where there was, it was camp and there was silliness, but it was Batman and Robin. You got the superheroes. It sounds silly, but the old style shows, like, this was there on the TV, like say BBC Two, after school, 6 o'clock, whatever night it was on, and you'd watch it because there was bugger all else on at that time, and I don't think Channel 5 was out then, not that there's a lot of shows on that, but you'd had like the 4 channels, then I think we got Sky, and it migrated to Sky, and it was always on Sky One, the Star Trek version. There's no way. I hate Star Trek. I hate it with a passion. The music's iconic, 100%. The music straight away, it's Star Trek. But it's just, it was always boring and lacking in action. And I know, like, what's interesting is one of my favorite Star Wars properties from the last few years is Andor. And that's more of a political cat and mouse type show. And I've still not watched the second series yet, but it is something that I will watch in the next couple of weeks, or I might even save it for when I'm on the plane back to Vegas in September, but I will watch it because I thoroughly enjoyed Andor, and I know it's had great reviews, and that's probably what Star Trek is. It's more political and a bit boring, and like I never bought William Shatner. I never buy any of them as the sort of tough captain who can go and kick ass. It was always like skulking around and using skills. Like I wanted someone just to go and just start, having a full-on battle, even if they're big monsters, they could always overcome, I suppose. So, it just did nothing for me, and even the fact that I've had to sign up for Paramount Plus for fucking 7 days to watch this is annoying me even more, Dave, considering you've given me enough, heads up to say it's still on Amazon, but it's leaving, Chris. And I'm like, yeah. And then I come on and I'm like, oh, fuck my life. So I've had to make sure I've cancelled it after I've watched it, but it is on Paramount Plus via Amazon Prime.
Sure, if I was a complete C next Tuesday, which I think I am, and I would have done this had I had the idea, I'd have set myself an alarm to remind you right about 2 hours before
Yeah.
You had to watch it before it disappeared off Prime.
Yeah.
Or maybe a little bit less, so you missed the last 10 minutes or something, just to really twist the knife there. But yeah, I thought I'd remind you a few times, but then I was like, well, let's see how this goes.
Yeah, but to be fair, I'd have done the same to you, Dave.
Yeah.
You're not friends if you don't do that to your mate. So he had 100% done that to you. So I applaud you. Should have done that and just to wind me up. But it's interesting you've picked this because it verges on stitch up, and it is the year of the stitch up, but it's also like, because it's not got William Shatner, it's not got Spock, Leonard Nimoy and all that, it's like, how would this sit for me, if that makes sense? And it's a bit of a more of a modern take. And then you say about 96, Dave, the one thing you forgot about 96 was 86th minute, Eric Cantona scored the winner against Liverpool, the Spice Boys, Dave, at Wembley. I remember it well, watching it in Benidorm with a Scouser there giving me shit all the way through the game. As soon as he scored,
I've been Men in Blacked. I flashy thing my
yeah, I thought you might. Yeah, we won the double that year as well, Dave. Oh, the memories of United being a good team.
That was
but anyway,
a terrible game though, wasn't it? I mean, ultimately, if you win, you probably don't care, but really, really bad game. We just won.
Awful.
I can think of that goal now, and I think, how did no one fucking block that? It seemed to go through about 6 players, and they're all just like, oh yeah, it's fucking going near the goal.
It's his trajectory of his body. I had it on VHS. Used to watch it going, I don't understand how he's kept the ball so low. And I think Rob Jones was on the left post, and he sort of does this weird flick. I think it goes past Jamie Redknapp as well. Yeah, Rob Jones does that weird flick. James is in net, David James as well. But yeah, I've watched that a few times, Dave, and it was marvellous when that happened. But anyway, let's talk about history now, Dave, because it's all in the past. It's all in the past.
So I hadn't realised, I probably should have looked at this before, but I've probably mentioned that I did the Star Wars experience at the Las Vegas Hilton. And I just thought to myself as we were talking there, at some point, we will do Vegas together at some point. But like, I was thinking, I could fucking drag you to the Star Trek experience. Yeah, it closed down in 2008. But I'm not joking. But I'm not joking. I think you'd even enjoy that because they did it so well. Because you go through, and then it's the usual thing. And I guess I hadn't been on many rides where it's interactive, but you literally, the doors sort of open and you're on the bridge and everyone's kind of really acting their parts, and you're being attacked and whatever. It was just done really, really well, really immersive. And just because it was done so well, I think even you'd enjoy that. But yeah, shame that it's closed down.
It's a real shame, Dave.
Yeah, I can feel your disappointment.
I'll turn off my bucket list, Dave, for Vegas. But yeah, thanks for that. Yeah.
Well, Chris, should we get into our trailer?
Let's do it.
Captain's log. Stardate 50893.5. The moment I have dreaded for 6 years has arrived.
So it's the moment when he realises nobody cares then, Dave, yeah?
The Borg have returned. Half machine, half nightmare. Fully invested in giving you nightmares and a Wi-Fi upgrade.
So basically, space zombies, being polite and full of tubes.
Earth is under attack, and Picard's crew must go back in time to stop the Borg from rewriting history.
So, this movie is basically Star Trek does Terminator with more flute solos.
When the timeline is in jeopardy, there's only one man who can save the future.
I thought you would say Doc Brown, but anyway, back quoting Moby's dick and sulking in a corridor, Dave, because he is a bit of a sulker. But anyway,
it's Star Trek First Contact, the action-packed, laser-blasting, Shakespearean reciting film where Picard finally loses his cool.
I do love this impression, Dave, but I've got to say, he does spend 90% of this movie on the end of a breakdown and 10% smashing glass cabinet.
Joining him, Data, the emotionally curious android, Worf, the warrior Klingon, and Beverly Crusher, Oh, Beverly.
I wasn't expecting that. Right, we have to do a voice. And don't forget James Cromwell as if Ron Cochrane, the future's most important scientist who's also off his tits on tequila and Steppenwolf. Oh, yeah.
The crew must build trust, fight the Borg, and help launch humanity's first warp-capable ship.
Which looks like someone duct taped a boiler to a missile.
And they must face the Borg Queen, seductive, sinister, and built like a nightmare IKEA lamp.
She wants to hate his body, literally. And she goes to points to prove it.
She's got the points to prove it.
Yeah, something like that. She's got a couple of points there. A couple of data points.
Oh, I like what you did there. The fate of humanity hangs in the balance, and the line must be drawn.
So it does time travel, to be fair, I'll give it that, Dave, but I'm still going with Tony Stark, and time travel's based off Back to the Future, exploding starships. It also got Picard in good shape in a vest with a phaser rifle, Dave.
It's Star Trek First Contact, the film that made it cool to like Star Trek. At least until Nemesis came along and ruined everything.
Rated PG-13 for mild peril, violent assimilation, and one deeply unsettling kiss between a robot and a USB cable.
Coming soon on a VHS where someone's recorded over the last 10 minutes with the X-Files.
If only it was Mulder and Scully. Star Trek First Contact. I'd rather be assimilated, and the fact that I can say assimilate correctly makes it even better, Dave.
Could have gone badly, actually, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Ass-mated.
Google, fucking Google. What does this mean? Yeah, go on.
Star Trek, ass-mated. I'm sure don't Google that. Don't Google that if you're listening. In the 24th century... No.
We're not doing that.
I can't keep it up. I can't keep it up. So, in the 24th century, Captain Jean-Luc Picard awakens from a nightmare in which he relives his assimilation by the cybernetic Borg 6 years earlier. He is contacted by Starfleet, who inform him of a new Borg threat against Earth. Picard's orders are for his ship, the USS Enterprise, to patrol the neutral zone in case of Romulan aggression and opportunism. Starfleet is worried that Picard is too emotionally involved with the Borg to join the fight. Now, Chris, what do you reckon to the opening of this movie?
Well, let me tell you something. I'll tell you what, Dave, if we're doing them voices, I'd end up sounding like fucking Phyllis off Coronation Street. Oh, Percy.
Yeah, fucking Dot Cotton.
Oh, Nick. I can't do it, Dave. I'm terrible at voice acting. So you know what? What's really interesting, and I'll be honest with you, when I did subscribe to Paramount Plus, Dave, thanks for that. And that'll probably it has been cancelled, which is a good thing. It's a 7-day trial, everyone, if you do want to do it. I didn't think this was from 96. I honestly thought I was watching a movie from the mid-2000s. Honestly, I don't know whether it's the upscaling technology through the streaming service or it was just made like that, but this seems like a more modern movie than 96. And obviously seeing Patrick Stewart walking, Dave, I know it sounds silly, but he's Professor X in here. That's how I always see him, as Professor X. Really interesting. I mean, he said before about the vest scene, but he's in good shape, Dave. And even now, I think he still does a lot of yoga and stuff. A man who does yoga myself every day. I've done it this morning. He's the way forward, definitely. But no, I found it really difficult. And I didn't have I don't even know the fucking Borg are, Dave. I only know the fucking Klingons. You know what I mean? We've all had plenty of Klingons over the years. But I genuinely remember the Klingon. I don't know the Borg. I didn't know what it was about. I don't think it does a great... For someone who's coming into this who's not a fan of Star Trek, this is a really difficult film to understand what's going on, who the Borg are. There's no real backstory on it, to be honest. It sort of just goes straight in. And this movie's like an hour and 50 as well. I think that's, for me, where for at least 20 minutes of this movie, and I did watch it in 2 sittings, but it wasn't because of, I was trying to get this Dave Horrocks voodoo doll and stabbing you because I having to watch it. It was just purely because I was sat in the garden, and then it was the point I thought I need to watch this on a bigger screen, like, because there's a lot going on. And I was like, even though I've got my earphones on and I'm watching it, and I'm then like going in the shade to try and watch it, like, no, it deserves to be on a bigger screen. So then when I watched it, I was like, God, this does not seem, it looks like it's an upscale 4K movie or something. It really did stand out to me. It's like really beyond its time, if that makes sense. Like, I was quite impressed with it. But yeah, story wise, I was all over the place. I didn't have a clue. And then seeing like Picard being a bit of a badass, but a bit of a prick as well. I wasn't expecting that, Dave. I don't know whether he's like that in the TV show, but yeah, I think I didn't have a clue what was going on, and I still didn't have a clue at the end of the movie, but I sort of went with it. And I'll be honest with you, Dave, I think, as you said before, if this had been my first ever Star Trek movie, I'd probably be a bit more invested in the series, and I probably would have watched the shows. But knowing that I've got that bias of the old stuff that was so terrible and camp and crap, and watching that, I remember watching Wrath of Khan, like say as a kid, bits of it going, this is fucking terrible. I just was completely off the Star Trek train, but I just think this isn't a bad movie at all. It really isn't. And I think it's probably beyond its time, if that makes sense. Before, it really is a movie you could watch now and go, yeah, this looks like it's quite recent, because Patrick Stewart don't look like he's aged at all. It's like
no, he's basically the same, isn't he?
Same person. He's probably been about 15, but yeah, I mean, I think he's got a good cast. I think like you can tell the budget. I was reading up on some of the stats, like the budget, the trivia was like it was more into this because this was the most successful Star Trek movie at the time. Right, out of the 4 they made, this was like the highest rated, the best. All the actors and actresses loved it. Thing you directed it. It was the best one. So yeah, honestly, I think it's not a stitch up this week, Dave. I'm not like you've thrown me cards on the table already, but I actually quite enjoyed it, which I feel dirty about, and I'm itching. I can feel the hairs on the back of my neck, fucking go. And I'm not joking, they are, because it feels so bad. I have such a hate for Star Trek, but this isn't a bad movie. And I don't think even if you're you were a Star Trek fan, you could watch this as a sci-fi fan. Just go with it. It just feel like there's quite a lot of exposition as a non-fan. I wouldn't have a clue. It feels a bit like watching Endgame. If you were a Marvel fan and you just put Endgame on and went, I don't know what you I know that it's a 3-hour movie and it probably does a bit of a look what happened before, but this doesn't do that. And I think that's where I really struggled with it at the start. However, I did enjoy it. And I think Patrick Stewart's so funny in some of this for all the wrong reasons. His character's brilliant.
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure. I was thinking about the MCU when you were saying that, because I had the perspective, I'd seen the Borg in the Star Trek The Next Generation episodes, and the thing is that was so terrifying about them was more the idea, when we went back to watch Freddy Krueger in Nightmare on Elm Street, and we're like, this isn't scary at all. It's more in fact, Freddy's really camp, and it's sort of a bit silly, but when you're watching it as a kid, it's more the idea of, well, what if that was real? What if like someone just got into your dreams and you could never sleep? Basically, you're fucked. It's just a matter of time. You've lost. And the thing I remember thinking about the series is, well, what their thing is, they're a bit like zombies, like you say, the trailer there. But they don't particularly have emotions. They don't get upset. They're just relentless. And you have one shot, or in this movie they sort of play about with that a little bit, but you have one chance to defend yourself or kill one of them in one way, but they very quickly adapt, and then you can't kill them in that same way again. So you'll get one of them in one particular way, you try and kill the second one, and they have this little force field thing that comes up. So just this relentless enemy, that they ended up escaping from. And yeah, I just remember thinking, God, that'd be an absolute nightmare. But the effects in the series were not to the level of what it was here in the movie. And as soon as it starts off, I remember thinking in the cinema, and the quality that you're seeing on. It was probably better now, to be honest. Like you say, you have the old HD touch up and everything. Everyone's got a big screen TV these days. It's just like, wow, this looks amazing. Now, so coming into it, with that perspective of knowing who the Borg are and that they're this relentless enemy, probably added to, if you came in with that, and obviously if you knew Picard did get assimilated as well, that would probably add to it for the fans. But let me put this to you. At the start of Star Wars, opens up and they're chasing this, you got this little spaceship being chased after by this massive spaceship. And, you have a bunch of laser fight things going on, and then you have Darth Vader coming in, and he's obviously looking for these plans. You are just dropped into the middle of a story, and if you were watching that for the first time today, you are it's like, what the fuck's all this about? So I like the fact it's pretty much action from the go, and it is dropping you right into the story. But I think some of the sci-fi that I love, it's that same way. So I'm conflicted about, could we have had more exposition to explain things? Maybe, but I just like the fact that you drop right in there.
Well, Dave, I don't want you slandering Darth Vader ever again, because whether you come into it or not, you've made a very good point. I don't know how to come back at you, Dave.
I was going to say, I don't remember slandering Darth Vader. But,
I was just trying to think on my feet.
I think Vader is the best villain in everything.
I do.
Just so brilliant, and yeah, it's about, so yeah, no dissing at all. But I realised you were doing the old verbal soup there. Just like,
I was trying to think of something smart, and I haven't got anything. No, but I do. You know what I find interesting, and I said it in the show, like joking, like Tony Stark says. So you're saying the whole time travel thing's based on Back to the Future. However, Back to the Future's probably done the best example of time traveling. They did it in Endgame and all that, and it works and stuff. And like obviously in Back to the Future, you do anything as you come back as a time traveler. You can alter everything, as we know with Marty and stuff. But you know what I saw the other day, Dave, and I still base it on that. I saw that someone put on Twitter, and I'd never thought about this in all years, but Back to the Future, and it's 40 years now since the first one came out. Did you know, Dave, that in 1955, at one point, there was actually, I always thought there was 3, there was actually 4 DeLoreans in 1955.
Oh, really?
Which is scary to think. Yeah, by the end of...
I need an infographic.
Right, so we've got, he goes back in time, doesn't he, the first time. Marty goes back in the second one, so there's 2 there. And there's the flying one, there's the original one. We've then also got the cowboy one, right? Yeah,
from the
3.
third.
And then there was something, yes, we need to send some sort of diagram, but apparently there's actually 4, Dave.
You literally dangle the carrot there. You were about to explain how there was
data
a 4
point. I just saw it.
3.
Right, hang on. Let me have a look. 4 DeLorean.
Or are they counting the train, maybe?
Let me have a look. Right. 4 DeLoreans at the same time. Here we go. The first film we might be following is unintentional trip. The later used to return to 85. Oh, yeah, the second one used by Biff to give his younger self an almanac.
Oh,
then Marty goes back, and then you've got the one in the train.
It's the
Biff one.
Yeah.
Yeah, bloody hell. Yeah. So, 4, Dave. But anyway, nothing to do with this movie, but there you go. Just thought I'd throw it in there. However, go on.
No. So what I was going to say, and not that I'd selected it in a rush, but again, I thought it was a Star Trek thing, so I had to pick another Star Trek one at some point for a bit of a stitch up. But I'm remembering that I loved the movie and certain things about it. Completely sort of forgot that there was time travel in it. So when they were talking about the old temporal rift opening up, and I thought, actually maybe Chris can get on board with the time travel thing of it. In my stupidity, I'd sort of completely forgot, even though I remembered the Cochrane thing and or the Cochrane character, just sort of forgot there was time travel in it. But so I thought, well, maybe you could get behind that. But obviously, I'm a bit of a nerd, bit of a geek, and one of the other things I think that grabs me about Star Trek, like Star Wars, is a lot of the technology you can't imagine it I remember watching, oh God, this must have been early 90s or something. There was a program called The Science of Star Trek. And it went through all the little inventions. And because what they do with the technology in Star Trek more is I feel like they go into the science a little bit more. They take these broad concepts a little bit, Chris, like say Red Dwarf. Red Dwarf does, talk about these real scientific concepts and then just writes a script and, something funny happens because of, I don't know, not just finding aliens, but time slides and time shifts and whatever, and they play around with that. And so, a lot of the language that they use, this documentary would basically say, well, okay, so like the tricorder, this little thing that like scans for everything. Or when they have, at the time, in the 90s, if you needed an injection, well, that's a needle that's going to have to break your skin and, inject you with something. But I mean, even now, I think, don't they have things that, injectionless injections type thing? Should have maybe Googled that before we started recording. But it's basically saying, well, if we take this little concept, how do we imagine that real inventions could be created from the ideas of Star Trek? And it was the bit that I remember more than anything is about the beaming to somewhere else. And in the original Star Trek series, it was purely a budget thing. So they didn't have the budget to like have a spaceship land on a planet. Whereas if you just, had a little effect there and you beam someone down. And so there's a thing called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which means like you down at the molecular level, you can't know what the mass and momentum of something actually is. And it was saying, well, he's looking at experiments that would actually try and, get you to a point where you could maybe reassemble someone's molecules somewhere else, but it would take so much energy, it just totally wouldn't be worth it. But I think the fact that they lean into the science more in Star Trek as well does make me like this kind of franchise in just a different way from Star Wars.
Yeah, and you know what? I can see it. And I think you're right. Actually, because with the Star Wars stuff, there isn't a lot of science behind it. Mike Burton might be now throwing something at the at his device that he's listening to, but there isn't, is there? They just like I always laugh and I've had a few jokes with Mike over the years, but there's massive plot holes in the Star Wars universe, and we all know that. And we've had so many great podcasts with Mike. I love it. Was the line, and he used to like laugh but there's a comic book series to justify that. But and he's right, and that's a great way to. They can clearly see these people within the Star Wars universe, these massive plot like points missing, data points that we should know about a character, how they've ended up here. But then each like, well, show it on the screen, show something, even a couple of lines would justify what's going on in Star Wars. And I think with this, I think with yourself, like you say, there's a proper the science side of it and all that. I understand why you'd be into it and why it's a complete polar opposite to Star Wars. Star Wars is the action movie, basically. It's got the action. There is stories behind it. There is more grounded characters. But I think with this, because none of the characters are super action hero badasses, are they? Like Picard I mean, Picard's like a head teacher, really. He's the captain, but he's a bit of a wanker in this, isn't he, at times? Like, he has a go at that Klingon guy. I know he was in the series. He's telling him how, him, Worf, and I mean, what a name, Klingon. Fucking hell. But, they've got him, and he tells him how bad he is and all that. But however, Dave, the greatest scene in this movie is when they go back and then he's got that computer-generated world and he goes full on John Rambo, and he's got the fucking gun there, the Tommy gun, and he's in that dance with that woman in here and the dancing, and he's got the Borg after him. However, the shooting that he does, Dave, is very Star Wars Stormtrooper-like, because he fires about 300 bullets, kills nobody behind any of the innocent bystanders, but the Borgs get it. I know it's a computer-generated thing. That scene is brilliant. I was like, what am I watching? And it's as if Patrick Stewart went, I want to be an action hero just for 5 minutes. And they give him, don't they? They actually give him. I'm not mad at that scene, because I think it's so silly. and completely out of character, completely the opposite from what I can see in this movie. I'm not saying whether he's fucking doing karate chops on people in the other movies, in the TV show, I haven't got a clue. But at this point, he's just like a very grumpy old man, and he's like had enough of life. And the next minute, he's going full on like action hero as well. So I thought that was good. And then you get the vesting and that with him. But yeah, I thought that was a nice breakaway to bring in like our times, the modern era, not, because they've gone back. It's weird, really. But the time travel thing, what was getting out of the time travel segue was that Data, who I didn't realize he was called Data until watching this, justifies the fact that one of the crew says, well, how have we not been like, changed or whatever? He goes, oh yeah, maybe we're just immune. I'm like, fucking hell, that's lazy. That is a lazy explanation for all the science, as you've just said. That is a Star Wars explanation.
They were caught in the temporal wake.
Bullshit,
so they were shielded.
I'm not buying it, Dave. I know it's one of your favorite series, but that is lazy. That is a Star Wars like line, that, isn't it? Oh, but it's because we were outside in a lead bunker and we survived. Oh, great. Well, no problem. Let's carry on. No problem. I'm not having that, Dave, at all. However, I do think when they do all that is the best part of the movie for me that I did enjoy.
Yeah, no, it is good. I mean, there's quite a bit we've covered there, but the bit that I definitely forgot is that they get to see the Earth and it's been completely assimilated by the Borg. Yeah. And again, I don't know if the origins, is there a bit of the Borg almost supposed to be communism or something like that? Once you're assimilated, all of your individuality is forgotten and you're just part of the collective. I'm not sure, but I think being able to see it, and actually I love the start of it because, again, knowing a bit about the character, Jean-Luc is this most of the time calm, collected, authoritative leader. He knows what to do. But you do have the PTSD, which they play about with. I mean, again, if they remade this now, please don't anyone, out there. But, if they did remake it, they'd probably lean into that a little bit heavier than even in this movie. Because, Starfleet are probably doing the right thing. They're like, look, you're too close to this. So, let everyone else, let the whole of the rest of Starfleet come and, defend against this Borg collective. You stay away because we don't know, could you flip sides or something like that? So you just stay over there. But I did, I got the old hairs on the arms stand on end when, he's out there defending, or not even defending, just in this actionless, just in case the Romulans decide to invade and take advantage of the fact that Starfleet's occupied. They're just out there, and he's like, no, fuck this, come on, we're off, because we can hear everyone being massacred, we can make a difference. And then I was like, fucking get in, come on, Jean-Luc. And then he goes there and then rescues Worf's ship, who's he'd gone off to become his own captain, it looks like, or whatever. Can't quite remember how he ended up there. And I just thought that was great. But I think the fact that he is normally so calm and collected, the bit in the holodeck that you mentioned, just, it did show, and then, he gets called out later for being Ahab from Moby Dick. And again, I just feel like, again, the series plays a lot more into the moral dilemmas and questions and, what's right and wrong and how would this work. I love that about the series. And this film still manages to do it a bit, even though it's amongst all of this action. But I would say, I'm sure it's probably, series like Futurama and stuff like that. I'm sure there's others that played about with the core idea of the holodeck and how you could play around with that, because basically you can program in whatever simulation you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. I'm booking it for half an hour. Just no one come in.
I want to be on my own, if you don't mind. Yes. No, but I think, was his character, was that out of place, that whole action sequence? Because it felt like he would never have done something like that in the TV show. He seemed like his mind, a bit like Professor X, his mind was his biggest tool more than his physical, what he's planning. He's being strategic in battle with the Enterprise or whatever it is. I don't think it's the Enterprise, is it? Is it a different ship he has? But yeah.
Different Enterprises. So I think they said this is the Enterprise E. So they, at various points they have to blow up the Enterprise or it gets destroyed in some way. So it's always a different incarnation of the Enterprise, but generally, it's the Enterprise that we follow.
Right, good. No, like I say, you're teaching me. I'm taking the mick a little bit, but it's a good movie, and I think he is brilliant. And I think he's acting. With that lady, he's brilliant, like all the way through. Like, I think there's some good scenes there. You can see they're acting their asses off, before they become like comrades and friends. I honestly think she's really good in it as well. Like, I just think she's really good.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of the actress's name because she,
Alfre Woodard.
So she's in. She's in Iron Man, isn't she? Was it Iron Man? No, it was Captain America Civil War.
Captain America,
at the start, and then she was in Luke Cage.
Luke Cage, yeah, Cottonmouth's sister, wasn't she?
Is it his sister?
His sister, yeah. It's his sister.
Right. But she played a great character in that. So
brilliant, yeah.
And she's like almost his moral compass. So she calls him out and sort of brings him back to his senses. But like you say, these are two great actors, and it's great how they play back and forth there. But I also like they do sort of have a little bit of a nod and a wink to the camera at times, don't they? So I like the bit. And again, I feel like if they made it today, would they make it more dark and, more horror, almost more body horror stuff? But when Picard is going down, because I can't remember which deck it is now, but they've obviously, when they blew up the Borg, they'd obviously got onto the ship somehow, and so they're assimilating people down there. And when Picard's coming down there and he's got Data, and Data's, got his human emotion chip or whatever it is, and he's like, oh, I feel like I'm feeling anxiety, He's like, oh, I think you need to turn off your emotion chip, Data. It's just like, oh yeah, that's better. And it's like, oh, to be a fucking android at times, So I do think they do have little fun elements, and when they're back down on Earth again, you've got these higher evolved Star Trek people, and they don't have the same vices as us. And you've got Cochrane there, who's sort of this famous, astronaut almost. He's the one who developed the warp technology that made the Vulcans take note of Earth. And but he's just a bit of a charlatan, really. And I tell you what, I don't know if you noticed this, but obviously, it's part of it's a regular segment now, isn't it, that we play about with some music stuff. And when they've got the rock and roll, they're down on Earth with what looks like a little cult or something. The music that they've got playing there is some kind of mock rock and roll, but they're like doobie 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 doobie, and I'm like, what is that? It sounds like it should be something real, but it sounds like something you or I have just plugged into fucking Model or something and made up some shit song.
Yeah, it is. Sorry, they were going to say something else then. Sorry. There was a little bit I found there was a bit of music in it. It was a bit like the cantina in Star Wars.
Oh, really? I missed that.
Yeah, there was one bit that I can't remember who it was. I think he was walking through one of the ships, and the background was like, "Is that a Star Wars nod, or was that just me? Maybe it was just me, Dave. You know what I mean?" But I think because of the acting so good between them two, like it does sort of bring me along then, where you do want that sort of like enjoyment where they're going to win, if that makes sense, or there's going to be a moral point to it. Obviously, Data, he's getting absolutely his arse handed to him, all the way through. He's like, you're not real. You're a machine. You're a robot. Everything. I think as a movie overall, like the whole thing, I think it works. I think like even the scenes with the ships, it's not like the old Star Trek where they're on wires, Dave, with like a black background. You can see the ship just fucking move. Remember that old joke years ago? And it'd be like the special effects, because it was the TV show. They were so like cheapo. In this is quite, for its time, 40 million's a big budget. And to translate that from a TV show, to this, I think they've done a good job on this movie. I really do. Like I say, I have problems with it, with the jumping on point, maybe because I'm not interested in Star Trek. And I felt I was missing something. But then once you get past that, about 25 minutes, half an hour in, yeah, it's a good movie. Very good movie. And Patrick Stewart's brilliant. He is really good in this.
I mean, you've surpassed what I thought. I thought I might get apathy at best.
No.
You've surpassed that a little bit. And you know what, Chris? I have to make my apologies now, because I realize I've just dropped a fucking clanger, because I thought, you know what, again, something I probably should have done before we started recording. I thought, let's just have a look at the Star Trek list. Yeah, Ooby Dooby is actually a song by Roy Orbison.
Ooby Dooby Doo. I know that one, Dave.
I mean, it does. It's not a fucking great one, Roy. Come on, if you're up there listening, it is not up there with Pretty Woman, let's face it. But it just sounded like fucking nonsense to me. It almost sounded like, that Italian guy that just made up fucking something that sounded like English.
Yes.
Which is, I keep hearing on the like EasyJet adverts or something. They keep playing it 'cause it is kind of catchy. But anyway, so apologies if there are any Roy Orbison fans out there. It is a real song. It's just not great. But
no.
Yeah, I think it is a good movie. And I think the way at times they build up tension, again, they stick with the Star Wars DNA when they're asking questions. So, they nabbed Data, and, he's kind of like, basically, if you think Pinocchio, right, he's an android, but he does always aspire. He wants to be human. And so when the Borg Queen, who is a little bit, she's a bit seductive, isn't she? A little bit saucy at times. She's giving him a bit of skin so he can actually feel it. And you can think, for someone whose dream is basically to be human, she's basically giving it to him. Now, I do wonder, because especially when later on, when you think, Data's turned, he's on the Borg side, I'm thinking, where else did she graft some skin onto him and show him how it feels? But I think it did a good job in, just making you think about what would I do in that situation.
Yeah, it does. That's what I was saying. Like before the reference to Andor, there's a lot of, other than the action bit, it's more a psychological type sci-fi movie, isn't it? Yeah. Because there isn't
cerebral, Chris.
Yeah. Well, Dave, there's definitely an X-Men reference there. But no, I think even when Patrick Stewart, there's a bit of swearing in it, which is interesting. You wouldn't really see that on the TV shows, I wouldn't have thought. So, no, honestly, I think it's a good movie. And one that, I said at the top, I could not believe this was from 96. I honestly thought I was watching the wrong movie. I genuinely did. I put it on. I was like, this is bullshit. Dave's having me. This is from like 2010 or something like that. I was like, and then I kept checking it. It's like, no, it's 96. So yeah, cracking job on the upscale, or whether it was like that originally. And I just think overall, look, I ain't going to go back and watch any of the other movies, Dave, let's be honest, unless you force me to. But I think you've picked one that, out of all of them, and looking at the ratings and just getting me interested, it's actually a pretty good one. Which I hate saying, but there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, again, I'm shocked. And the only disappointment for me is I felt like they could have really pushed on from this point. But honestly, they didn't.
No, they didn't. I know, I've read it all. I'm like, yeah, we're not watching any more of these, Dave. But yes, I'm with you. I think they could have. This could have been the start of a proper, like, trilogy or whatever it was going to be. There could have been something they could have made out of this, because this was a bit, and by the sounds of it, this was a bit of a needle in a haystack, wasn't it? This was like one of the best Star Trek movies they've ever made, to be honest.
I mean, for me, it is. And I do enjoy some of the other movies, for different reasons, but I kind of, I feel like this is the top of the tree for me. And I was a bit concerned going back about would it really hold up, but I definitely think for me, and I'll just say again at the end of the movie, obviously, Picard, again, he's not some goody two-shoes who always makes perfect decisions, always, he's not Captain America. He's not trying to save life at all costs. There's a moment where one of his crew get infected. And if you think about these long space voyages, you're with the same group of people for a very long time. So you build personal relationships with these people. And the guy gets infected. He's like, help me. And Picard is like, right, he's dead. So he just shoots him. He helps him by killing him off. So again, just that moral sort of ambiguity, the fact that he's a little bit grey at times, I thought was really good. But Chris, should we get into our final review?
Let's go. So, Dave, yeah, I don't know what's happening here. Some of these stitch-up movies I've really enjoyed, and I love the fact it was Star Trek. I was calling you wrong, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a different type of movie. It didn't feel like Star Trek. The action bit in the middle is brilliant. That's almost like a comedy. That he's having some sort of dream and wants to be the superhero. So, yeah, honestly, I enjoyed it. I think, would I watch it again? Probably not, but I think Patrick Stewart's excellent in it. I think the time travel thing, yeah, we'll sort of go with that. I don't think it's a patch on some other time travel movies, but you're right. It was enough for me to jump in and go, oh, that's something different. You're right. Once there's a time travel element, I love that sort of, well, how are they going to explain this? How do they explain that? I don't think they did a great job at times, but I think overall the movie's good. And I think for me, I'm going to put it in Hill Valley, Dave. So if this was one of your stitch-ups, It hasn't worked. Considering I imposed the Gumball Rally on you last week, I think I've done better out of this than you, my friend.
I think I would agree. Again, you've just shocked me there. I thought it was an Elm Street for you at best, and Hill Valley, fuck me. Again, it had occurred to me that at some point I'm going to go back and I'm going to try and lift out, like Blake did.
Yeah.
Go back and lift out some audio clips of how much you hate sci-fi and just replay them back to you. And then all clips where you're gushing over sci-fi. But yeah, it's taken me by surprise, that one. For me, I came into this a little bit worried that it wouldn't hold up and that my memory was kind of playing tricks on me. And actually, when you come back and watch it, it just doesn't stand up at all from what your memory thinks. But I loved this. I loved going back to it. The fact that, I haven't watched this for a few years, the fact that, it's obviously had the HD touch-up, I think it looks great. Yeah, I mean, if they had a few more million, it'd probably look even better. And I wonder, could they have made it even darker? Maybe. But I think for what I know, where I'm grounded with Star Trek and it being more on the... they hide the budget well. They try and make up the aliens and everything, but ultimately it's 90% dialogue with a little bit of action. Whereas this, it's almost, it's certainly increased the ratio of how much action there is. But yeah, the kind of themes of it, the whole, he's the leader and he's prepared. Basically Starfleet Command at the beginning, they've given them a pass, really. They've said, we've got this Earth kind of threatening event and we think the captain is a little bit of a wild card and we don't know what he's gonna do, but ultimately at the start he's like, right, come on, when he decides we're going and everyone's like, no, I'm gonna follow you, so I'm not going to object, go for it. But then later on, he makes some questionable decisions where the crew clearly disagree but they don't dare to air it. And it's only because, the woman from Earth whose name I've already forgotten, I'm afraid. So, Lily. Here we go.
Lily, yeah.
It's only her calling him out because she doesn't have the baggage. She he's not her captain. And so I just thought it came together brilliantly. And the fact that it had, some people might not like the fact that it's got a little bit of humor in there. It's a little bit MCU at times. And but I kind of like that, just breaking the tension a little bit. So yeah, I came in thinking at best I was going to put this as a Pleasantville, but even just talking it through now, for me, this is a Cloud City. And like I say, the only sadness I've got is just, why didn't they just capitalize on this and make more movies like this?
Well, they're allowed to have one good one, I suppose. At least I can say I've enjoyed some of
a broken clock is always right twice a day.
As you tell me all the time with my harebrained schemes that I come up with. But no, honestly, a great pick, really good pick, and more enjoyable, as I say, than I genuinely expected. I thought it was going to be terrible. Now, Dave, next week is our good friend Herb's pick, Dave. And this is a movie I'll be amazed if you've seen, because I've definitely not seen it, Dave. We are going back to 1986. It's an Australian comedy about a man who's a tram enthusiast, Dave, who becomes involved with a pair of would-be bank robbers. So we're going to be covering the 1986 Australian comedy film, Malcolm. And I'm not going to say get into the trailer, Dave. I'm simply going to say I can't wait for our Australian accents next week when we do our own trailer. So brilliant.
You're bloody right.
You're bloody drongo. Yeah.
So, I mean, Herb's always forthcoming, isn't he, with some gems, some not so gems from Australia. But I actually saw, on social media somewhere, and Crocodile Dundee pops up. And it was like, oh, fucking hell, how have we not done that one? But
I know, what a film.
And it is year of the stitch up, so maybe that's one for next year. But we need to remedy that, particularly as I put the sample of it in the outro, but only very subtly, just about, that's a knife. But anyway, I never seen this one, never heard of it, so really looking forward to it.
No, it's going to be good. Oh, great pick. Thanks for that. So if you want to email us, the vhsstrikesback@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on social media @vhsstrikesback. If you do want to support us like Herb is, and we do appreciate everyone who supports us past and present, please go over to patreon.com/the VHS Strikes Back. So the roll call of honor and a big thank you to Nick, Greg, Gareth, Mike, Lee, Helen, Dylan, Dan, Justin, Susan, Timothy, Matt, Hales, Ken, Lucky Lou Green, Herbs, Jack, Math, Blake, John Hammond, and Mr. Tony Farina. So thank you so much, guys, for your support. I'm looking forward to this one day, because some of the Aussie ones we've had have actually been belters, haven't they? The one about the guy who wouldn't sell the land or whatever it was, that was great, that one. The little courtroom one. Remember it? I can't remember what it's bloody called. We did it about a year ago.
The Castle.
Really? That's it. That one, Dave. The Castle. Yeah, it's almost like I remembered it. But yeah,
Aussie staple.
Yeah, brilliant movie. And obviously BMX Bandits is one of our most listened to episodes, Dave, picked by me. So there you go.
That's bonkers to me, that, isn't it?
Ridiculous. Even on YouTube, it's one of our best ones. And if you do want to, listen to us, we are on YouTube as well. So you've got YouTube Premium. You can put it on the background like a podcast. We are over there, the VHS Strikes Back. We have got No Treat, No Surrender free. If you want to get over there, get that on. If you're slightly into the more raunchy stuff, by the looks of it, Basic Instinct's going to overtake No Treat, No Surrender free. It shows how sick we all are in the world. It will do at some point, 100%. Well, there you go. But no, please get over there. We do support. Come and like and subscribe, and we do appreciate all the contents over there as well. So, Dave, what song have you got for us today, my friend?
Well, you know what? Again, I was so tempted to just go back to the, risk the copyright strike and just start off with a do, 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 just to piss you off. But no, again, I did my usual, where the hell do I go with this? But I mentioned it and alluded to it before. So 96 for me, I was a proper indie head. I'd had my full indie awakening, and I've always had quite an eclectic taste. But I think around this time, I would say from mid to late 90s, I was just all about the indie and just absolutely loved it. And that probably coincided with, so much of it being on radio and everything. It seems weird to listen back to the radio now. It's a lot of it's podcasts, even where you're hearing this. But I just absolutely loved it. And so I thought, well, let's take an indie side to it. And I thought, as a theme to the story, I was thinking about one of the most haunting bits for me is the guy who got infected by the Borg. And I was thinking, since he graduated and he's been part of the crew, he's always looked up at the captain as, you know, being this leader and someone you'd follow into battle. And I thought about, you know, all the people off camera that were assimilated. And so this is a kind of a story. I'll be honest, Chris, pretty self-indulgent, this one. I haven't leaned into the comedy at all. But I thought about the story of this nobody, this red shirt Star Trek drone, if you like, who's, you know, got that, you know, unshakable faith right up until the end when he's actually assimilated. So here we go. Bit of a longer one, this one. I was listening to a lot of Radiohead around this time as well.
Woke up to static in the walls. Footsteps like whispers down the hall. A red light blinks and doesn't stop. I try to breathe, but I forgot. You wanna assimilate me, the captain will be the one who saves me. Unless I'm infected, then I'll be connected. Queen's got a charm of rusted chrome, bringing malware to our home. Cochrane shadow sips the void, echoes fold reality toy. You won't assimilate me, the captain will be the one who saves me. Unless I'm infected, then I'll be connected. Phoenix roars and taking flight, temporal rifts tear through the night. Then a probe swamp silent flight, heart starts an endless night. You won't assimilate me, the captain will be the one who saves me. Unless I'm infected, then I'll be connected.
Good tune, Dave. I like that. Really cool.
Yeah, so thanks for that. So, I mean, honestly, most of the stuff that I'd ever tried to sit down and write was always fairly melancholic, especially around this time, like, you know, always mean and moody and whatever. And so, after a really great chat, I thought I'd bring the mood down, like last week when we were talking about Gumball Rally, and you said, "Oh yeah, that guy's died, unfortunately, soon after this movie." So I thought I'd bring the mood right down. But no, I did. I think that might be objectively. I have a lot of fun putting the silly ones together, but I think that's one of my favorites, I must admit. So anyway, Chris, great chat. Again, knocked me out with the score right at the end there and just how much you enjoyed it, but fantastic stuff. So thank you very much for that, sir. Thanks to all our listeners out there. Thanks to all our supporters, and we'll speak to you next time.
Bye.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do?
Maybe we could build a fire, sing a couple of songs, huh? Why don't we try that?
We better get back, because it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
I'll be back.
That's odd.
We came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
Wax on, wax off.
Get to the chopper! One ring to go. All right. Ding, ding.
Bust you up.
Go for it.
Well, here we go. Ain't so bad. Ain't so bad. Ain't so bad. Come on. Ain't so bad. Ain't nothing. Come on. You must be crazy or something. I'm crazy. You just a stupid. Yeah, maybe you crazy or something. I ain't breathing heavy. He's a fool. He's stupid. I see you in 6 months.
I must break